Hear these words from the Gospel of John, chapter 19. A jar full of sour wine was standing there. So they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Several years ago, in the midst of the Iraq War, one of our nation's political leaders gave a speech aboard a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier. On a large banner visible far above the podium from which he spoke were emblazoned the words, "Mission accomplished." If those words referred to the crew of the aircraft carrier, which was nearing the end of a 10-month deployment, then indeed an important mission had been accomplished. But if instead the banner was describing the war about which the political leader below was speaking, well, that was a different story. As it happened, following that 2003 speech aboard the aircraft carrier, there were more combat casualties in Iraq than were incurred prior to the speech. There was a disconnect between the message on the banner, "Mission accomplished," and the reality in the war. Of course, a sweeping proclamation like "Mission accomplished" is a bold claim, one more easily aspired to than achieved. But in the Gospel of John, we hear an even more daring claim in Jesus' last words on the cross. There hangs Jesus, brutally beaten, a prisoner of the state, subjected to a gruesome form of execution meted out by the occupying Roman army. This is not the picture of triumph. And yet, that bloodied, barely breathing prisoner was able to give voice to one final sentence, all of 3 words: "It is finished." The Gospel of John reports Jesus said, "It is finished," and then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Note the contrast. It is one thing for the commander-in-chief of our own armed services to stand aboard an aircraft carrier in 2003, an aircraft carrier that is an imposing indicator of military might. It is one thing for that political leader of a superpower to claim victory under a banner that reads, "Mission accomplished." Even if the banner stretched the truth a bit, it seemed believable. All of the trappings of power were there. Of course, the trappings of power were also in evidence as Jesus hung on the cross near Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. But the indicators of power all seemed to reside with the Roman soldiers. They wielded the weapons. They hammered the nails into Jesus' flesh. They carried out the execution. Jesus had no visible power. He was hanging in the air naked, literally nailed to a cross. Yet in that moment, it was Jesus who uttered the most audacious proclamation of all. "It is finished." The goal line had been crossed. The price had been paid. The victory had been won. It would take days before others would begin to see glimpses of this triumph. And it would take years, decades, centuries, even millennia for humankind to even begin to grasp what had been accomplished in that moment. We still don't understand it fully, or even at all. But what Jesus understood in that agonized utterance on the cross is a mystery that we celebrate even if we don't comprehend it. Death was defeated that day. Oppression, injustice, and brutality had met their match. The Prince of Peace proclaimed, "It is finished." As followers of Christ, may we work for the day when violence, hatred, and racism are indeed finally finished. And may God's boundless love, so evident on the cross, sustain us until that day.